Hey, if you're someone who comments after watching an entire video, then boy do I have a treat for you. And if you're someone who smashes the dislike button and leaves, then why are you even here watching the first few seconds? Don't you have an angry paragraph to type somewhere about what makes you mad and how you know everything already? Now, this topic isn't fun, and this video will be confusing to some. But it is important to have this discussion, even if the message only reaches a few people, because honestly, who am I? In this video, I will be going over the summary of modern pay-to-win in video games, and explaining why pay-to-win is better than you likely think. I will argue why pay-to-win is better than the alternative in a particular genre of game, and oftentimes is just a good thing in general. Notice how I did say a particular type of game. That is right, in this video I am talking about pay-to-win in typical MMORPGs. Games with progression systems that matter. Content is locked behind needing to be a higher level or having better gear, and there are no skips of any kind except for meeting the requirements the game sets for you, many of which potentially being time-gated. This excludes games like Sea of Thieves and Elden Ring, even though some can argue that they do technically meet the definition of an MMORPG. To my definition, they are not. Needless to say, skill-based games like Apex Legends, Osu, and Valorant can never be pay-to-win because then they would no longer be skill-based games. With that out of the way, let's go. Picture a world. In this world, an omnipresent deity resides above the clouds. And this entity unbiasedly executes all parties associated in the development of games with loot boxes, pay-to-win skins, pay-to-win mechanics of any kind, gambling mechanics of any kind, time saves, or really anything that gives a player something that can be bought with money. All in-game shops disappear as companies do not want to risk the wrath of the deity in the clouds. Not only this, but the deity executes all players who try to RMT, aka real money trading, all players who boost players for real money, all players who try to set up botting in video games, or, well, the deity just executes all people and parties involved in video games where any sort of profit margin is in place besides the initial purchase of the game. All games cost anywhere from $1 to $100, depending on how much effort was placed into the creation of the game, and the price of the video game is determined by the deity and the deity alone. Oh, also, hacking and cheating for competitive gain is also punishable by death. Why not? If anyone goes out of their way to pursue a loophole in this very flawed system, or take advantage of the system in any way, shape, or form, then they and their 5 closest associates, family, and friends will be executed by the deity. Now, I know this is a very terrifying dystopian example, but you would be surprised how a lot of people actually think that they would enjoy a quote-unquote fair gaming system like this. Now let me explain what problems this would cause. Apart from obviously potentially being killed by this omnipresent force and the sketchy monetization feature of $1 versus $100. For a lot of competitive shooters and competitive games, this does nothing. Apex Legends, CSGO, Valorant, Overwatch, none of those got affected much at all besides no loot boxes. So, as one can see, these shooter games in our modern society are already pretty fair. But for anyone who has played an MMORPG, you can see that these strict regulations would force the genre to drastically change. A very popular pay-to-win MMORPG was released 2 months ago, Lost Ark. Let's say Lost Ark exists in this universe, and it is exactly the same way it is now. Except for the shop is gone, all the bots are gone, and RMT is obviously punishable by death. Things would be better, obviously, right? Wrong. Before I explain why, I will briefly remind you, the viewer, that people, society, and the internet have changed so much in even just the last 10 years. Being a part of online communities is no longer special as it is so commonplace. MMORPGs used to be innovative in the gaming industry and seen as fantastical. People felt fortunate to be a part of these worlds and therefore did not mind quote-unquote wasting their time playing them. Nowadays, people's mindsets are more competitive, as it is so easy to compare ourselves to each other because everyone's accomplishments, work ethics, and lifestyles are advertised to us in social media, whether we like it or not. We seek validation now more than ever, as it is so easy to portray our accomplishments, and this leads us, as a species, to disliking the feeling of wasting time. This is true now more than ever before, as it seems so easy to be productive since the internet connects us to everything. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the world is changing rapidly, and many of us subconsciously don't want to be left behind, so it is impossible for MMORPGs to be like they used to, since they were seen as the future. Now MMORPGs are seen as massive time sinks because of all the negative media that surrounded them for many years, and even if the game is phenomenal and loved by many, if we, the average player, see that we are not getting anything immediately out of it, then we automatically assume that we hate it. Now, why am I saying this? Well, you'll see. And while my next few sentences can be summed up by just saying 2 words, human nature, let me explain in more depth why things would be worse than they are now if Lost Ark lost the pay to win. Play to win, or P2W. This is a term many of us haven't heard in a very long time, as P2W got replaced as an acronym for pay to win. But play to win used to be an extremely big deal, and people seem to have forgotten about it. Play to win seems much better than pay to win on paper. But surprisingly, pay to win was actually offered up as a solution for it. While pay to win did exist before play to win, it definitely picked up steam as a result of it. We human beings always want things to be better. And as a result, we usually make a lot of mistakes before we actually solve a problem. Pay to win was one of those mistakes. Players would complain that no matter how hard they worked, they could never compete with those people who played more than them. If someone had a job, they automatically were worse in the game than someone who didn't have a job. If someone played 12 hours a day and slept a healthy 8 hours a day, then they automatically were worse than someone who played 15 hours a day and slept only 5 hours. More time to play meant you could analyze PvP better, do more repeatable content for infinite gold and resources, etc. Gaming companies tried to fix this by implementing limited things a player could do every day. Now you can only do daily quests 3 times, for example. This didn't help much, as there was always more things that could be done. And without players complaining about pay to win on Reddit, that gave players more time to shut up and farm. Players would gather materials all day, fish all day, level up alt characters all day to go through the endgame dungeons on alts all day. You get the picture. If you have more time to play, you were always going to be at the top, and nobody would ever be able to pass you, ever. Making daily quests able to be done only a few times per account instead of per character still didn't help with the problem, as all those alts still got drops from mobs and could do other things. Some games tried to combat this by making a lot of your progress become lost when the next big expansion came out. And while this was supposed to make players feel more motivated to join the game, as they could catch up easier with the play to winners, it made players who worked hard for their previous gear angry. Anyways, play to win in video games was getting out of hand. Some players even ended up dying from exhaustion from playing so much and ignoring life necessities such as eating, drinking, and sleeping. And while yes, these players could have made better choices or gotten help, sometimes it's not that easy, and the fact remains that they died. And death is a huge deal. Every time it happened, it was big news, and gaming companies were in the line of fire. Players felt less motivated to get jobs and be productive elsewhere, as all they cared about was being the best and feeling as though they had something they could hold over other people. The rich may have a nice car and house, but are they number 4 in the world on Ion's leaderboards? Sure, there were some people who were making some money playing these games through trading their gold, selling services and the like, but they were very few and far between 10 years ago. And of course, players who noticed this and weren't making money didn't like this, but the main player base were so busy playing 12 hours a day that they didn't notice RMT becoming a problem until it was too ingrained into the gaming world to get rid of. In summary, there was no simple fix for play to win, until it was replaced with something even more jaw-dropping: pay to win. Players absolutely despised pay to win so much that they forgot about play to win. What's worse is that pay to win didn't even fix anything play to win at first. Now the players who played 15 hours a day just started paying money on top of playing all day to continue to be more on top. The players who stayed at home all day just started using mommy's money to boot. I remember this being huge news in the gaming world. MMORPGs were discouraging playing all day by introducing skip mechanics, catch-up mechanics, and all this other stuff to save players time. This at first didn't solve anything, but soon started making waves. For better and worse. While yes, pretty much every free-to-play game that used to be play to win completely died, Ion being an example, new games took their place with better models that they learned about from the mistakes that their predecessors made. Games that were too play to win failed, and games that were too pay to win failed even worse. Companies thought that since pay to win and play to win on the extremes won't work anymore, that MMORPGs are just more trouble than they're worth. Gaming companies had to think of a way to balance the two, and it was tough. Eventually, MMORPGs, besides the few mainstream ones, died out, and the mainstream ones were so bad with pay-to-win mechanics and paying an insanely high monthly fee, but players were ignoring this because of nostalgia from this, or thinking about being in the same universe as this woman. MMORPGs were a joke until Nearly a decade later, a new world came out. Pun intended. Players in the West were starved and were willing to try anything. Eventually, for reasons deserving of their own video, New World basically died, and Lost Ark, while having the best balance of play to win and pay to win of any mainstream MMORPG to ever be released in the West, still has the casual audience very jaded. The world has changed a lot this last decade, so the complaints coming in are certainly justified. We have only been able to use phone games as references to pay to win in games, so we haven't been able to see the models that work and don't work properly, since we've honestly never had a model that truly quote-unquote works. The justifiable complaints, in my opinion, come from the players who get unlucky in these games, as gambling is scary. But pretty much every post I have seen tells me that if that person had the ability to think outside the box, then they wouldn't have made that post in the first place. If a game is successful, it is because it does a lot of things right. Pay to win in these types of games ends up being a positive thing, not only when used as an alternative for all the stuff I mentioned before, but also because there being time skips and time saves in games makes players not feel terrible for going to work. I remember the play to win era. I felt as though me going to school was what was holding me back. Granted, I was in the top 1,000 on the ranked leaderboards out of 100,000 weekly participating players, so I felt pretty damn good, but I knew I could have been better. When I go to work now or to the gym, I don't feel as though I'm losing. I feel as though I'm winning. And in Lost Ark's case, I am still a completely free-to-play player besides the Founders Pack. Not that anyone would believe me though. I have 5 characters in Tier 3, and my main is at 1400 item level. If you don't know what that means, then basically I'm saying that I am a free-to-play player in a pay-to-win game, and I am high enough in gear that I can participate in all the content in the game easily and smoothly. This balance is absurdly good, for example, and that is why there are hundreds of thousands of concurrent players and millions logging on daily all around the world into Lost Ark. There being pay to win in games to a small degree to save players' time is motivating for people to go make money and still be productive in life, which is so much more important than video games. You do not need to play all day in Lost Ark to be successful, but if you do, you still get small advantages over just playing the minimal and doing dailies. And if you pay money, you can also get advantages proportionate to the money spent, while there still being no reason to spend money ever. And this system can help show that the pay-to-win model can be good when done right. We many times overlook this because we always think we deserve things to be better, and we want things to be perfect. What many of us, especially in the West, do not realize is that perfection is unobtainable, and you do not have to be a rocket scientist to understand why that is. I think that the Western mentality for MMORPGs can be summed up simply through this beautiful analogy I heard the other day. In Korea, players look at pay-to-lose players as Ferraris at a red light. I mean, pay-to-win, sorry. And right next to them is a little Toyota Camry. When new content comes out, the light turns green, and the Ferrari rushes ahead to the next red light about a mile away. After a short time, the Toyota catches up and looks over at the guy driving the Ferrari. He is sweating profusely and staring straight back into the eyes of the man of the Toyota Camry. The whale says, "Hey man, take a look at my car. Pretty sweet, right? Look at me, man, take and inspect." The man in the Toyota Camry replies, "Yeah, man, that's cool. We're doing the same thing. Make sure not to forget the event. It gives you a lot of currency." Yeah, but did you see my substats? They're higher than yours." Yeah, man, that's awesome. Just make sure not to mess up the mechanics later when we do that big boss fight. Remember, if even one person messes up, all 8 of us wipe. And many times it is one of those players who pays to play less that messes up on those mechanics. In Korea, they call it pay to lose. And everyone knows it exists, but the best players are nearly all free to play or very light spenders who spend because they want to, not because they want to have better gear than anyone else. In the West, many of us don't think about how sweaty and gross that guy is when he speeds off ahead of us and how our car works perfectly fine. All we care about is that his car is better than ours, and we want that car, and we expect you to give it to us for free. Yeah, the world doesn't work like that. When I play MMORPGs, I usually plan on paying some money to save a little bit of time. But I didn't do that in Lost Ark. Right as I started playing, my friends started spending money, and I wanted to show them that a successful game, such as Lost Ark, has great pacing, and you don't need to spend money to succeed. I don't even have to play for the next 5 weeks to keep up with endgame pacing, and I didn't shirk on my job or any of my other real-life duties to get to this point. But then again, who's gonna believe me, am I right? Now, even after watching a lot of this video, I am sure many of you are not convinced, but hopefully now you understand a bit better why pay to win does exist and why it is a problem that I'm not qualified enough to solve. But I know that it isn't the problem. The problem is us. We always want things to be better, and we don't even know what we want. We just know we want more. Equal opportunities for all in games? I don't think egalitarianism, socialism, communism, or anything of the sort in video games will necessarily solve any problems. If you hate those big scary words, then why do you want them to exist in video games? Play to win is comparable to communism, for example. The more you play, the better you become. The hard workers will thrive, while the lazy will be losers, no matter what they do. Things should not be so black and white. Companies try to create a balance because everyone's situation is different and they want to appeal to as many players as possible. More players means more money, and more money means better game. Lost Ark follows the definition of pay to win to the T, but it caters to the majority by not letting it get out of hand. Despite this, the game is criticized, and nobody offers up any criticism other than game's trash because pay to win, and they never give an unbiased response on what they think not trash is. And this obviously helps no one. Now the conclusion/summary. Having skip mechanics and resources in the cash shop forces companies to think about pacing so they can prevent it from letting players get too far ahead. If there was no way of limiting people from going too far ahead, then obviously a game with no ceiling becomes a pure play-to-win game, and imbalances occur with the players who can't play as much, so players will quit. If there exists an environment where there is a hard ceiling that every player will reach in a short period of time, then players will feel less motivated to grind as they are working hard for the exact same thing that everyone is working for, and when they reach it, they will quit because there is nothing else to do. They have their plus 30 armor piece and weapon. MMORPGs are games in it for the long run, so they want to try to stop this from happening. There should always be things for players to do if they want to play a game, and there should be a soft ceiling, but not a hard ceiling, so players do not feel forced to play non-stop at peak efficiency, and there needs to exist things in the cash shop to help players gear up, even if at a slow pace, so that players always know that if they do need a little boost to catch up, the option is available to them even if they never plan to use it. This surprisingly promotes a less stressful gaming environment in MMORPGs compared to the alternative systems. Stress is very bad for many reasons, so limiting it in the games we are supposed to be having fun playing is just a good thing, period. Because of these reasons, it is really hard to find a balance that works for an MMORPG, and that's why so few companies are ambitious enough to try to make one. But an MMORPG that has found a solid balance is a pay-to-win game like Lost Ark. At the end of the day, though, all monetary systems, no matter how done well, to the untrained eye, will be seen as predatory, especially depending on the culture and/or environment a person is a part of. We human beings are selfish and think about how things will be better for us and our personal agenda, rather than better for the majority and better for gaming, period. At the end of the day, people should be accountable for their own actions and shouldn't be considered victims for spending their money when they didn't have to. You are entitled to think whichever way you want to. Just be aware that the more mature you are right now, the less regrets you will have for the future. Think outside the box and formulate your own opinions based off of logic, research, and reasoning. Not just, duh, I want a Ferrari, or them to lose their Ferrari. Also, I know this isn't something a lot of people may want to hear, but you're supposed to be trying to have fun in the video games you play. I know it is a bit of an archaic concept, but I really think it is true. Try to have fun. You don't have to have the highest rank or the best gear in every game you play in order to be an amazing person. I got news for you. You're already very great. And if there is anything that holds the average person back, it is a negative mindset. I have heard people say that gamers play MMORPGs to escape from the harsh pay-to-win of reality. But I believe that is very untrue. Video games, like watching YouTube videos or playing a game of chess, are simply a form of entertainment. And the vast majority of people play them to be entertained in one way or another. Have a wonderful day, gamers. Bye-bye.